let's dive into the seafood. So when I set out to write Eat to Beat Your Diet, I had these conversations with my publisher, and I said, I really need to write about seafood, fish, because omega-3 fatty acids happen to be fat fighting, metabolism activating, and they activate brown fat as well. And the feedback I got from the editor was, be very careful about seafood. Many people don't like fish. So we don't want to be, putting too much information on it. I decided to write an entire chapter about it. Okay. And the reason I decided to do it, because it's so important when you think about delicious foods that adequately represent eating culinary traditions. So much of humanity lives on the coast, and those people who live on the coast live off the sea.
Yeah.
And to the point that, and they eat seafood all the time. It's second nature to them. I do think that responsible, sustainable fishing is something that needs to be practiced. So much of the disruption that we have in our ecosystem has to do with mechanization, industrialization, this sort of, overage and excess, without being mindful of the consequences. So let's assume that that you're able to go to a fishmonger or a seafood section in your store and find responsibly sourced seafood. There is amazing. So everybody knows that oily fish are healthy for you, right? And most people go, well, I don't like oily fish. What are those oily fish? Salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, right? They're like, oh, those are pretty fishy fish. I'm not sure I like that. Well, I happen to like seafood. All right. And I've been fortunate to be able to travel to many places and experience different seafoods in the places where it's naturally caught, cooked, and eaten as part of the culture, whether it's in Italy, whether it's, off the coast of Naples, or whether in the Adriatic Sea, or whether it's in Hong Kong. I've had the opportunity to eat all these incredible dishes. And I tell people, if you don't like seafood because you don't like the way it tastes, don't worry. You just haven't yet had it properly cooked for you yet. When you find that opportunity, you're going to love it, like the millions of other people that love this kind of food. So the study that you're referring to, that I think is amazing, shows us that we don't need to have the oiliest of oily seafoods in order to get health benefit for omega-3. So this is a study in Iceland that did break out into 4 groups. I just want to isolate the most important ones. They wanted to study the fat-burning weight loss possibility of salmon. And so they were looking at an oily fish like salmon. By the way, how much omega-3 does salmon have? About 1,500 milligrams per 5-ounce serving of salmon. It's about the size of a couple of decks of cards, not too much. And they wanted to, and their initial idea was like, well, let's compare salmon with a non-oily fish like cod. Cod is a white, flaky fish, not very oily, not terribly tasty. Actually, very mild. Actually, I like cod. And how much omega-3 does it have? 294 milligrams of omega-3 and about 5 ounces serving, same size serving. So literally, 7 times less than salmon does. And they gave these people, these research subjects, either salmon or cod or fish oil or nothing, 3 times a week for 8 weeks. They gave them a little bit of a calorie restriction so that you can really see weight loss, or not weight gaining, but then to see if you add the fish on, do you actually get more out of it? Does the gas pedal go even harder if you have salmon, the oily fish? Well, guess what they found? They found that, in fact, salmon did cause weight loss quite dramatically in conjunction with restricting some calories, about 15 pounds over 8 weeks, just 3 times a week, 2 decks of cards of salmon. Pretty profound. By the way, they have to eat the skin because most of the omega-3 is actually in the skin of salmon, not so much in the flesh. Now, but the real surprise is that the people who had the least oily fish, the cod, that has 7 times less omega-3s than salmon per serving, okay, they actually lost 10 pounds in 8 weeks eating cod only 3 times a week. So the real kind of jaw-dropping, eye-opening discovery here is that we don't need to have the oiliest of oily fish in order to get benefit when it comes to our metabolism and fighting body fat. You can lose 10 pounds in 8 weeks by eating cod, which is not that oily. So that opens up the gate, heaven's gate to looking at other seafoods. Because remember, we used to say, well, you got to go for the oiliest of the oiliest seafoods. Oh, the other ones, never mind. They're not oily enough. Well, if cod's good enough to do it, with that enough, if the omega-3 in a cod, 284 milligrams is enough to do it, then we can then figure out how many other seafoods do you need to eat in order to get the same amount as 5 ounces of cod? Well, I'll give you some examples, and I pepper my whole section on seafood. So if you're a seafood lover, please read my chapter. You're going to find out amazing seafoods there that I enjoy, that most people have. I'm quite sure this is the only book with the word diet on the cover that talks about mitten crab and mantis shrimp and razor clams. But
it's a deep dive, that chapter. I was reading about types of seafood I wasn't even aware existed. So it's a really, really fascinating read. Obviously, we must just cover for that person who's listening who is choosing to be vegan for whatever reason they're choosing to be vegan. And you just said all the benefits of fish and omega-3s. You do cover this in the book, but could you just explain what you would ask them to do to try and get those health benefits?
Sure. Look, omega-3s are originally in seafood. They're in plankton. So it's sort of the plant of the sea. So you can actually get the omega-3 precursor, aminolevulinic acid, actually from certain plants as well. Okay. Or you can actually, which then your body will process and create, to a certain extent, omega-3s, very similar to what you would get in fish if you're a vegan. But honestly, what I tell the people who are vegans who ask me, it's totally fine to get a high quality marine omega-3 supplement. You can actually have the supplements as well if you're not getting enough from your diet. It's so important to eat this because that actually improves your immunity. It has effects on your telomeres for longevity and good quality of life. I think that it's not a big deal if you are not eating seafood, but just find other sources to eat it as well. So, but just to really complete an arc here that I think people will be interested. If cod is good for you, can help you fight body fat because of the omega-3, the amount of omega-3s you get, it's similar to cod. 4 medium-sized Gulf shrimp, 8 oysters, 1 forkful of mackerel, half of a serving of a size of a deck of cards of halibut. This is an example, like if you want to find out what the dose of seafood you need to get exactly what they found in this research study, it's packed with it. Yeah. I'm quite certain this is the only book that's ever done this because I looked for other examples and then I had to put together a research team to crunch out all these calculations. But the point being that I think that most people who go into the grocery store, it may not be a reflex to stop at the seafood counter unless you already normally eat seafood. But I'd encourage you to really look for, it's a little bit of adventure in a grocery store to look for all these metabolism useful foods. So if you're of the mind and you eat seafood and you're open to it, please do stop by the seafood counter and compare the notes and see if there's something that might catch your fancy.
Yeah, brilliant. You cover metabolism in a deep way in the book, which people can read about. Just to finish off this conversation, one of the key reasons I wanted to bring this up is you outline some research which has shown that there are these 4 very stable stages of metabolism in our lives as humans. And it really fights against this idea that many of us have that, in our 30s, when we get into our 40s, of course, our metabolism starts to slow down and we start to put on weight. That evidence is absolutely suggesting that is not the case. Also, the caveat there is I know women, when they become perimenopausal and menopausal, there can be a consequence sometimes on people's weight. So I am aware of that, just bringing that into the conversation. But just to finish off, Dr. Lee, how would you explain that top line view of metabolism and why so many of us think we're going to put on weight as we get older?
Yeah, this was the most jaw-dropping thing that I researched when I was writing this book. First of all, a few commonly held thinking ideas about metabolism. We're either born with a slow or a fast metabolism. My sister was born with a fast metabolism, so she's skinny as a stick and can eat anything. Me, I was born with a slower metabolism. I've struggled with food my whole life. How commonly How common do we actually hear that kind of sentiment? The other thing that we believe is that, when kids are teenagers, they're eating 2 or 3 meals, they're bouncing off the walls, their metabolism must be going off the charts. And then, of course, as you just alluded to, that when we reach our middle age, we're naturally going to expand our middle because our metabolism naturally slows down. It turns out all of those ideas are false. They're incorrect, scientifically incorrect, because and the discoveries, by the way, to show they're incorrect have been made just within the last 2 years. To me, this is the cool part about science, is that we're still beginning to discover more about our own human nature. So 2 years ago, published in the journal Science, which is one of the most credible, scientific, rigorous journals that focuses on discovery, a study was published by a researcher with the lead author of Herman Ponzer, who worked with 90 researchers. They did the most ambitious study of human metabolism ever undertaken in history. They looked at 6,000 people coming from 20 countries, young and old, men and women, different racial backgrounds, different dietary backgrounds. And they studied the metabolism in all exactly the same way, which is one of the distinguishing features. They gave them all a drink of water, in which the water, which is H2O, hydrogen and oxygen, they tweaked the chemical hydrogen, they tweaked the chemical oxygen so they can measure it. So when the subjects drank the water, their metabolism worked on the atoms, and they can measure their metabolism in the breath or in the blood or in the urine. And the other remarkable thing is they studied humans that were 2 days old, newborns, and they studied people who are 90 plus years old at sort of the tail end of life. So this is the 6,000 people of the entire human spectrum. When they actually looked at the results of metabolism, the first results that came out, the raw data, showed that metabolism, everyone's all over the map, just like you'd expect, right? But then we now live in this era of supercomputing and really being able to really crunch data. What they did is, for every person's body size, they were able to remove from the data the impact of extra body fat, excess body fat. They were able to subtract from the result. And when they removed the effect of excess body fat from all of these individuals, all 6,000 individuals, it was like pulling the cloak off the statue of David for the first time. They saw that humans all go through only 4 phases of metabolism from birth to the end of life. Well, the first thing is that everyone's born with the exact same metabolism. And from age 0 to first year of life, our metabolism is skyrocketing to 50% higher than what your metabolism is going to be when you're an adult. That's first phase. Second phase, from age 1 to age 20, metabolism goes down, 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 down to adult levels. This is right through adolescence, right through, people's super energy, the teenagers' high energy mode. Metabolism's going down. The real mic drop here is that from age 20 to age 60, human metabolism from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 is rock solid. It's stable. It does not decrease. Human metabolism is hardwired. The metabolism is hardwired to be completely stable through the mainstay of our adult lives. And I do know people gain weight. I'm going to come back to explain why. And then the last phase, that's the third phase. The last phase is phase 4. From 60 to 90, your metabolism slowly sags a little bit to about only 17%. By the time you're 90, it was when you're 60. All right. By the way, that middle part, phase 3, means that 60 can be the new 20 if you follow your natural metabolism. So why do people actually gain weight? Why do some people have more trouble gaining weight than others? Because during those periods of time, from 20 to 30s to 40s to 50s to 60s, life happens to us. And so think about it. Our metabolism is hardwired. Mm-hmm. It's like the operating system in your laptop. It's going to do what it's going to do. However, in our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, life happens to us. We have stressors. They prevent us from getting enough sleep or from exercising regularly. We have hormonal changes that can change our mood. We've got relationship pressures. We've got emotional stressors, financial pressures, job stresses. All these kinds of changes slow us down. And it turns out that it leads us towards behaviors that allow us to grow extra body fat. So in this research, when they added the effect of extra body fat back into the system, back into that stable metabolism, guess what happened? When you add extra fat into the system, it crushes your metabolism. So excess fat slows your metabolism, not the other way around. It's not the slow metabolism that at the beginning of life causes you to gain extra fat and extra weight. It's completely the inverse. Why is that surprising? And why is that good? Well, I'll tell you why it's good news. It's surprising because people don't think about it. It's good news because it means that we now have the power to be able to affect some change, to fight that extra body fat in our middle years. We can now have the awareness that our operating system, our hardwiring is intended to actually be rock stable. So if we fight our extra body fat, that visceral fat, and if we actually stay active, okay, and if we lower our stress and do all these things that actually help our fat be its normal, healthy self, okay, then it'll actually allow our metabolism, our suppressed metabolism, to rise back to the surface to where it wants to be. We can be aspirational for our metabolism. It's not our genetic fate. It is in our hands.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, what a walk through human metabolism. And there's a beautiful image in your book around that chapter where you literally, as you say, lift off the cloak. It's like, no, you're not slowing down your metabolism as you get older. You're putting on fat, and that's slowing down your metabolism. So it's like, what comes first? It's actually, for all of us, whether we want to accept it or not, we are, like you mentioned before about the tongue and the snoring, right? It's already going on. That's then slowing down and damaging our metabolism so that we think there's a problem with our metabolism. Dr. Lee, I think this is honestly such a wonderful book. There is so much in it that we've not even touched upon in this conversation. For that person, Dr. Lee, who feels inspired, but who has really struggled to lose excess body fat before and really, really wants to, do you have any final words for them?
Yeah. I mean, I think you should love your food, to love your health and love your metabolism. If you align what you enjoy doing with ingredients that can activate your metabolism and help you fight body fat with your goals of health, you will actually start to move in that direction. And I think small steps actually have a big difference. Lose a little, gain a lot, and it should be aligned with pleasure. So rather than try to jump, off the cliff for something extreme, align yourself with what your goals are, with something that you would actually enjoy. It's time to rediscover the joy of food. Pick those foods that actually activate your metabolism and help you fight body fat. You will actually live long and thrive along this way.
If you enjoyed that short clip, I think you are really going to enjoy the full conversation, which you can check out here.